Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is KJ Ricardo and today's episode is a classic film review over the 1945 film The Picture of Dorian Gray. I was really excited to watch this movie because the book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, is one of my favorite books by Oscar Wilde. So the story revolves around Dorian Gray. He has a portrait made by his good friend Basil, and Dorian is very young and beautiful. He becomes close friends with Lord Henry. In the book, Lord Henry is very philosophical. I was very pleased to find that the movie adaptation was exactly the same. Lord Henry is very philosophical, and this kind of rubs off on Dorian. Dorian makes a wish. He wishes he could stay young and beautiful forever, and that his portrait would grow old and ugly. This, of course, adds some suspense to the film. Eventually, Dorian meets Sybil Vane, who is played by the wonderful Angela Lansbury. She's very young in this film, but it's nice to see her early career. There's a relationship between Dorian and Sybil. They fall in love, and I really enjoyed watching that love story. At one point, Dorian reads a poem to her, and it's actually a poem by Oscar Wilde. That made me laugh because, of course, Oscar Wilde wrote the book that this movie is an adaptation of, and so that part made me laugh. And then eventually, Dorian breaks up with Sybil, and so this adds more conflict to the film because Sybil commits suicide. It's very unfortunate. This changes the dynamic of the film, and the portrait begins to change. Dorian is staying young. He's staying young and beautiful, but his portrait is changing, and it's showing his true self, his ugliness, his ugly character, and I think that was very well done. Eventually, Basil's niece Gladys falls in love with Dorian. Now, as I was watching the film, I noticed that this whole part of the movie wasn't in the original book. Basil's niece is at the beginning of the movie, and she's a young girl. But the movie spans 20 years, and Dorian remains young and beautiful. He's not aging. And so Gladys, she's a grown woman now, and she falls in love with Dorian. It's a cool concept. I will admit that. It's cool. It's interesting. But it wasn't in the original book, and so they did change that. Dorian's portrait is continuing to change. It's showing his true self. Dorian is not a very good character. He killed Basil, which is awful. He was his friend, and his portrait continues to change and show his true self. I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end of the movie. You'll have to watch it yourself. But Dorian and his portrait are connected. They are one, essentially. And so maybe you can figure out what happens based off of that. But my overall thoughts are that this was a very well done movie. Everything about it was very suspenseful. Dorian's character is changing. He's evolving in not a very good way. He becomes a nasty character, but it's nice to see that. Hurd Hatfield's performance as Dorian Gray was exactly what I wanted. He is very young and beautiful, just like Dorian Gray. George Sanders, who played Lord Henry, was also really great and philosophical. Angela Lansbury was wonderful as Sybil Vane, and even Donna Reed, who played Gladys, she was great in this movie as well. Overall, I rate this movie a 9 out of 10. I give it a solid A- because it's a really good movie adaptation. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is one of my favorite books in classic British literature. It's a great book, and so I was excited to see the movie version. This movie did have its own liberties. They changed some things with the introduction of Gladys, the niece, and how she grows up and Dorian stays young. It was an interesting idea, and it added to the movie in a nice way, but it was a little bit different. But my favorite thing about this movie was seeing the portrait and seeing how the portrait changed, showing Dorian's true self. I think that's one of the benefits of watching a film adaptation is that we got to see what this portrait really looked like. It was a lot different than what I imagined in my mind. And so it was really nice to see the story come to life in a very nice way. My one major complaint was that the ending felt a little rushed. The ending all took place within 15 minutes, which is kind of quick to conclude a big storyline like there is in the picture of Dorian Gray. So that's why my one major complaint. But overall, I really enjoyed watching this movie adaptation. I would definitely recommend it to anyone, especially if you have read Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. You would enjoy this movie adaptation. I think it's one of the best movie adaptations of a book ever made. It's one of the best. It truly is. It's suspenseful, adds a lot to the drama originally written by Oscar Wilde. It's suspenseful, and it just tells a great story. And so I would definitely recommend this movie. Let me know if you have ever seen The Picture of Dorian Gray or what you enjoyed most in this review. Put that in a comment and I'll be happy to read that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time with another movie review. And remember to always laugh often.